Justice League Dark. You know, when I first heard the announcement of this movie, I was pretty excited about it because I'd read the comic. I actually owned the comic for a good while, but I don't have it now. I ended up passing it along to a good friend of mine. I just felt like, she would enjoy it to check that out because a lot of people aren't really familiar with the comic, at least people that I know. So, yeah, I was pretty happy that they were doing an animated movie. That was just from the initial announcement. Okay, but then I saw the cover of the movie. Now, let me be clear. I am a Batman fan. You can look at my background here and tell that I am a Batman fan. Definitely a fan of the character. But, yeah, I was definitely concerned off of seeing that cover. But before I get to that, because this really is going to be more of a rant than a review. So before I get all into that, how I felt about seeing that cover and then, the follow through with it, let me focus on some positives first of this movie because it wasn't a completely bad movie. I will say that one of the main strengths was the voice cast. I was pretty impressed by it. Matt Ryan is Constantine. I mean, he really has become Constantine. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I think he does a great job. Even just the voice. Yeah, he does a great job as that character. He has sort of that nonchalant snarkiness about him, and it just works. Another standout definitely to me was Deadman. I was really looking forward to seeing Deadman in animation. He was on an episode of Justice League Unlimited. It was a two-parter. It was actually pretty good. And it had an ending that just really struck me. Because, in fact, I won't ruin it for you. If you've never seen that episode of Justice League Unlimited, you can search that out for yourself. It is on Netflix. And there, like I said, there's an episode, a two-parter episode with Deadman on it, I think. I think it's a two-parter. But, yeah, regardless of that, though, yeah, some people might feel like the voice was a little bit cheesy, maybe pushed too far with the Boston accent or whatever. I liked it, though. I just really did like it. And I thought he added a lot of character to the movie. And the voice of Swamp Thing as well was very on point. I just really like that voice, and there are some other characters that work pretty well too. I feel like everybody, as far as voices, they did their part. They may have not all stood out, but they did a decent job. And usually I feel like Warner Brothers does a pretty good job of voice casting. I don't know if I'm trying to remember her name, Andrea Romano or something like that. I'm not sure if she's still working with them or not, but she does voice casting. She's done voice casting for a lot of the DC animated movies, and she just really does a great job. I think as far as the action is concerned, most of the time the DC animated movies are very impressive with the animation. Like it's just so nice during the action scenes, and very well choreographed. In fact, there's some action scenes that I really want to go back and watch from previous animated movies. There's a fight in actually I think every action sequence in the Supergirl. It wasn't called Supergirl. I know there was a movie that featured Supergirl when she first arrived, and had Darkseid as well. That's what it was. Darkseid was within it as well, and it was just a really good movie. I'll put an image up here on the screen. But like I said, I think they just step it up, and that's impressive. But as far as positives for this movie go, I mean that's about it. I like the voice cast and I like the action, and I'm not going to say too much about the action. I really don't want to give away too much of the movie in case you do plan to watch it. But yeah, I think that the action scenes were pretty much on point. But beyond that, let me go ahead and get into my negatives and my rant, basically. So yeah, when I saw the cover and I saw that they put Batman front and center and like all the other characters were in the background, right away I was just so disappointed. I am so tired of Warner Brothers and DC not having faith in their other characters. They constantly have this feeling that like nothing can be successful unless they put Batman front and center. It is getting so annoying, and I still love the Batman character. They haven't made me like the character less. It's getting ridiculous though. And when I saw him front and center, I was like, oh, here we go. They're going to overuse him. And then they released some clips of the movie, which I only watched one of the clips, I think, before watching the actual movie. And the clip was very Batman focused. And I'm like, why did they keep doing this? It's like, how is anybody else supposed to get into their characters? Anybody that's not already familiar with them, how could they possibly gravitate towards these other characters when they downplay them and they make them seem like they're not significant unless they're tagging along with Batman? Because that's what this movie became. It wasn't really a Justice League Dark movie. It was a Batman in Justice League Dark movie. I mean, they really did put him at front and center, and I was so disappointed because also, like I said, I read the comic. I actually had the collected edition of the first comic series when they went up against Enchantress, which I'll talk about more in a moment. And the original Justice League was barely in it. And I was fine with that. Because when it comes to magic, that really is something that they just don't deal with well. The Justice League, that's a big weakness for them overall. Definitely Superman, that's one of his major weaknesses, that he can't deal with magic. Magic, I think, affects him probably even more than kryptonite does, which kind of makes you wonder, and I gotta address this real quick, why in the world has there not been a major storyline in which Lex Luthor like tried to learn dark magic or something? And if there is, please correct me, if I've missed a storyline, but I've never heard of Lex Luthor actually taking the time to try to learn any dark magic or anything like that, because I mean, seems like that'd be pretty obvious, but that's just my opinion on that. But yeah, getting back to what I was saying, there are some great characters in the Justice League Dark roster that I was really looking forward to seeing them shine, and yet again they put Batman up front, and they, the other characters, they did get to shine some, but just not as much. And also there were characters that were left out altogether. There were like 2 or 3 characters they just completely decided to leave out. So, and I wasn't blown away by those characters in the comic, but still it's kind of disappointing that, not to see them at all because they wanted to make more time for Batman. I really wasn't feeling that. So, and they did work in, I think they did work in one character who I had not seen in the original Justice League Dark comics. Maybe they did bring her in later on, and she was basically the Orchid, the representation of the house. Constantine's house. And for some of these things I'm not remembering well, I will throw up images here on the screen to help you all out. But yeah, like I said, I like Batman, but I was very frustrated that DC and Warner Brothers keep having this attitude like it has to be all about him. To me, that's a big part of what really ruined Batman versus Superman, although that movie had a lot of issues. And I really did, let me be clear, I love Ben Affleck in that movie. He was definitely the best part of it, but to put so much focus on him that they basically dumbed down Superman was just not cool, in my opinion. Now, along with the fact that characters did not get to shine enough, I gotta say that I was so disappointed that Swamp Thing basically was limited to just a cameo. I mean, I got kind of hyped when they got to the swamp, and like I could tell they were in a swamp, and I was like, oh, here we go. And then that scene ended up being just too brief for me, and then they did bring him back later on, and still he was barely in it. And I mean, he was like, they brought him back and then he was just gone and like not mentioned again, and I was like, well, what was even the point of that? So I found that very disappointing. And again, I'm trying to be fair, other characters did get to shine, and that was cool. I mean, like I said, Constantine I thought did a great job. He got to shine. Zatanna, they showed Zatanna's power like to her full extent, and I was pretty impressed by that. So I mean, that was cool. Etrigan the Demon, great character, and they used him limited, and so I'm getting back to some positives here as well. I thought Etrigan the Demon was very cool. And like, of course, Deadman. I really do like that character, Deadman. Really hope that they make a pop figure of Deadman, Zatanna. Like, there's a couple other characters, DC characters, they really need to make into pop figures. But, getting back to the movie, though, yeah, Swamp Thing barely being in it was so disappointing. And also, I have to go ahead and address this. Now, In the a Justice League Dark comic, Enchantress was the main villain, and she fit there. She really made sense there. Why in the world they chose Enchantress as the main villain of the Suicide Squad movie, I will never understand. It, to me, like, well, I was hearing reports about what was going on with that movie, and I feel like it was like a last minute switch to make her the main villain, because maybe they felt like the villain they had in mind wasn't major enough. It was my understanding that there was some other character who was kind of putting together his own version of a Suicide Squad, and that was going to be the main villain. But apparently, you know, like I said, they switched that up, and I think it was a poor decision, because if you know how powerful Enchantress is, then why in the world would you send, Harley Quinn and Killer Croc, you know, and Deadshot, these people up against her? I mean, she's powerful, extremely powerful with magic. So it really didn't even make sense to send that Suicide Squad up against her. You know, I like those characters, and they do have their positives, you know, and their strengths. But putting them up against one of the most powerful magic characters in the DC universe really doesn't make a bit of sense. And by the way, I'm not like a huge fan of Enchantress. That's why I actually didn't keep my pop figure of her, and I had the minis as well. I had the common mini, and then I also had the exclusive mini. I just went ahead and sold those, because I was just like, especially the more I thought about the Suicide Squad movie, I was like, eh. But I do like the Rock Candy line, so that's why I'm actually hanging on to this one. I really do like this figure here, at least, you know. But the villains they ended up using in this movie, they were just so weak and so forgettable, and just that classic evil for the sake of being evil and gotta take over the world type of thing. It really annoyed me. There was one little unsuspected element to it that, I'll say this, I tend to watch movies without trying to guess what's going on and this and that or whatever, so it may have been obvious to some people what was going on, but I kind of tend to block that thing out. So when a reveal was made towards the end of the movie, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, that's kind of clever, but it still didn't amount to much in the end. And I'm being vague on purpose, because like I said, I know some of you may check this movie out, and I don't want to completely ruin it for you. But yeah, as far as villains go, just weak. And I'm really disappointed that, okay, the DC Extended Universe, they clearly, to me, do not have their act together. And I don't want that spilling into the animation, because already the animated movies, other than their offshoots, some of their offshoots, like I think they did a good job with The Dark Knight Returns. That was pretty good. But the Killing Joke was kind of weak. The actual Killing Joke material was okay, but that whole Batgirl sequence at the beginning was just very weak. And then some of the other animated movies have just not been as good as movies like Under the Red Hood and, the animated version of The Death of Superman. You know, some of these movies lately just aren't really cutting it. And their interpretations of some of the characters like Wonder Woman, I'm really not happy with. Now, I like that Rosario Dawson is voicing Wonder Woman, but that's just because I'm a big fan of Rosario Dawson, you know. She's absolutely gorgeous and a great actress, but the way her interpretation, their interpretation of that character, really not working for me. So yeah, like I said, DC animated movies, I feel like they're not quite as great as they used to be, and I really don't want to see them being handicapped basically because of what's going on in the movie. So yeah, I feel like Enchantress was left out because she was just used in the Suicide Squad. And that's why we ended up with these very weak, generic villains. And yes, I know that the villains that they use have been around in DC for a long time, but still, they're not interesting. And that's why you don't see them used very often. I have to say also, the animation, okay, the animation during the action sequences, it steps up, and it does look pretty good. But overall, the action is very weak. And I'm so tired of seeing so many American animated movies that, and yes, I know that the initial designs are done here in America, basically the storyboards and all that's done in America, then the full-on animation a lot of times is shipped overseas, but still, it just doesn't compare to anime. Like, to me, some of the best animated movies, and I'm not talking computer generated, I'm talking hand-drawn here, but some of the best American animated movies still don't look nearly as good as some of the weakest anime movies, and that's a shame to me, but it's still the case. And there were some animation flaws within this movie too that really bothered me. And yes, I'm calling them flaws because this was a rated R animated movie. And yet they still did this thing, and I am gonna ruin like one moment here, but it's nothing major. There is a moment where there are two demon characters that get their heads cut off, and it doesn't kill them. I mean, they're still because I mean they're demons, so it basically sends them back to hell, I think. But before they go, their heads are on the ground, and instead of actually showing like the gore, like, you know, up under, I'm just using Swamp Thing as an example, you know, like right up under the neckline, instead of showing any type of gore or anything, they did that typical animation thing where it's just like solid up under their neckline, you know, where their heads were cut off. And I'm just like, this is a rated R movie. Why in the world would they do that? It looks so stupid. It really looked like action figures with their heads cut off. It was just so lame to me. And there was some other moments of animation where I'm like, I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, this looks like a coloring book. It doesn't really look that impressive, you know. It's just, but again, you know, it steps up there in the action sequences. It's just like, why didn't they carry that all throughout? And if it was a budget thing, I don't really like budget as an excuse, because if you can't do it right, then just don't bother. You know, if you can't thoroughly make it an impressive movie, then just don't bother. So DC, I'm really not happy with DC overall right now. I really hope they get their act together. I feel like the animation is going downhill. I still want to see some other things within the, within animation. Like I've said recently on my channel, I would love to see a Bombshells animated movie. I think that would be awesome. But overall, I feel like the quality is starting to dip there. As far as their cinematic universe is concerned, they really don't have it together. And how could you play film franchises by ear? Like, their original slate that they put out has been completely changed around. They have no direction. It's really sad right now what's going on, and I just don't think it's going to get better. I mean, fingers crossed, fingers crossed that they do right by Wonder Woman, but the Justice League movie, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure how that's going to be. And then the future is looking kind of bleak too, because they're having these scheduling conflicts now where it looks like Flash is going to get pushed back. They're really struggling with casting. There's a lot of back and forth with casting, trying to get movies casted, like the Green Lantern movie, which apparently is going to be like Green Lantern Corps and feature possibly Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. So, I mean, I'm down with that, but they got to get their casting together, and they just need an overall plan. Even with Shazam, now all of a sudden, Shazam is apparently going to be split, basically. I mean, because they're going to have a Black Adam movie. I guess they want to go ahead and put The Rock to work, and then a Shazam movie, which, I mean, I'm okay with them focusing just on Black Adam, but it's like, where does this fit into the grand scheme of things, though? Really, what is their overall plan? Marvel has their movies mapped out for like 20 years. DC can't get it together for just a couple, and it's really becoming annoying as a DC fan. So I'm gravitating towards Marvel. Even in the comics, I'm starting to gravitate towards Marvel more, because I just feel like it's more interesting what they have going on. It's more entertaining. So yeah, as a big long-time DC fan, this is just, to me, it's kind of disheartening to see where things are going. And yes, I am a true DC fan. For anybody trying to say I'm not, I mean, that's more of my DC figures there, and I got plenty more of them. I definitely have more DC than I have Marvel as far as my collectibles are concerned, because like I said, I'm definitely a DC fan, but I'm just not happy right now. But that's enough of my thoughts. Like I said, this really was more of a rant than a review. I want to hear what you all think about DC animated, DC the live action movies. Do you think they can kind of turn things around, or are you happy with what they're doing? Because I mean, there are some fans of Batman versus Superman and Suicide Squad out there, so I'll respect your opinion. Let's get that talking, that dialogue going down there in the comments. But yeah, for me personally, I'm frustrated, and I feel like Justice League Dark was a letdown, and Suicide Squad, Batman vs. Superman were letdowns. Yeah, I just hope things turn around. But yeah, thank you all for taking the time to watch, and don't forget to comment. I'll talk to you all again real soon.